In the pursuit of unattainability, one of the key aspects is the ability to control one's reactions. Understanding this principle opens the way to inner strength and independence. Every time a person succumbs to an impulsive reaction, they inadvertently give away a part of their power over themselves. Many people live in a state of constant readiness to react, allowing external factors, whether it's a random comment, a fleeting glance, or an unexpected turn of events, to throw them off balance. As long as a person remains captive to reactivity, they become vulnerable to manipulation, predictable in their actions, and, most importantly, easily hurt. The renowned psychologist Carl Jung spoke of the fact that uncontrolled emotions are often a reflection of internal conflicts and unresolved problems. In other words, if something causes a strong emotional reaction, it indicates not the external force of the irritant, but the presence of an internal problem that requires awareness and resolution. This is where the root of the problem lies. Why does such a strong reaction occur to certain things? The reason is that people attach excessive importance to things that shouldn't really be that important. Too much dependence on the opinions of others, the need for external recognition and approval, make a person vulnerable and reactive. What happens if you change this perspective? What horizons will open up for someone who learns to control their reactions and not allow the external world to dictate their emotional state? The answer to this question may be the key to finding true unattainability and inner harmony. Unattainability is what distinguishes those who have grasped a deep truth, inaccessible to the understanding of the majority. Not every event requires a response, let alone the expenditure of personal energy. Every attempt at defense, every justification, every angry or disappointed remark is an admission of vulnerability, a demonstration of control over oneself, albeit to a small extent. But what happens when a person masters the art of not reacting? When in response to an insult they remain calm? When provocations are not reflected on their face? When in the epicenter of chaos they maintain inner peace? At this moment, true unattainability is achieved. How to learn not to react? First of all, it is necessary to pause before answering. Most people react impulsively without thinking. In response to attacks, they immediately take a defensive position. However, by training the mind to pause, a person gains control over the situation. It is important to ask yourself, is this event really worth my energy? In the vast majority of cases, the answer will be negative. It is necessary to learn to observe without getting involved. Carl Jung emphasized the importance of observation without identification. Not every event requires personal participation. Often, the best answer is its absence. You should learn to perceive situations from a distance, like a spectator in a movie theater. Mastering the art of selective indifference is not a path to insensitivity, but a conscious choice of what deserves attention. It is impossible to protect oneself from provocations, but it is quite possible to avoid participating in someone else's game. Body language is a powerful tool of influence. Calmness, silence, and an impassive expression disarm the opponent. By maintaining composure in response to attempts to anger you, a person demonstrates the loss of power over them. Strategy should replace reaction. A thoughtful response, dictated by strategic goals, is much more effective than an emotional impulse. In some situations, silence is the most convincing answer, in others a disarming smile. It is important to remember the long-term perspective and not give in to momentary emotions. When a person stops reacting predictably, the attitude of others also changes. Someone will be embarrassed, not understanding the new model of behavior. Someone will be disappointed. But there will also be those who will be even more respectful, because inner strength and unattainability are felt on a subconscious level. The main thing is that self-perception changes. There comes an awareness that there is no longer any dependence on one's own emotions. Being unattainable does not mean being indifferent. It means possessing such a level of self-control that external factors are not able to disrupt inner harmony. To increase resistance to emotional outbursts, an effective method is proposed. When an impulsive reaction occurs, before giving an answer, you should pause for 5 seconds. This time is necessary to become aware of bodily sensations, tension, anxiety, discomfort. Such manifestations signal the need for further work on oneself. It is recommended to compile a list of situations that provoke the strongest reactions and carefully analyze their causes. It is important to ask yourself daily, how many times during the day did external circumstances take over? You should visualize an image of yourself not subject to such traps, striving to make it a part of your personality. When internal changes occur, a new perception of the world opens up. The ability to let go increases inner strength. Releasing excessive attachment makes a person stronger than they can imagine. There's a little-known truth. Attachment is the main weakness. Anything that holds you back, anything difficult to relinquish, makes you vulnerable. Those who have mastered the art of letting go are unreachable. However, most people don't know how to do this. They become attached to people, situations, expectations, fearing that by letting go, they will lose something valuable. Society teaches that letting go means losing or giving up. But in reality, letting go brings liberation. The works of the eminent psychologist Carl Jung emphasize the importance of distancing oneself as an integral stage on the path to self-realization. According to him, a person's inability to break free from the shackles of the past, to let go of past suffering, and to realize the limits of their influence on what is happening, hinders their development and prevents them from moving forward. It is in the ability to let go that great strength lies. A person who has overcome the fear of loss becomes invulnerable. Often people make the mistake of becoming attached to what is not intended for them. It's worth considering how often you've had to stay in an environment that has long ceased to meet your inner needs. How often have you had to maintain relationships that drained your energy and left you empty, simply out of fear of loneliness or change? How often have you made unsuccessful attempts to change another person, nurturing the illusory hope that they will one day become the ideal partner? It's important to realize a simple truth. What you have to beg for has no true value. What you have to achieve with excessive effort is not really yours. Anything, whether a thing or a relationship, that costs you your peace of mind is too expensive. People with inner strength know how to let go quickly. They don't linger where they are not valued. They don't insist on continuing relationships where there is no respect, and they are not afraid of loss because they are confident that what is truly meant for them will not require excessive effort to hold on to. The art of letting go. How to free yourself without feeling loss. Instead of perceiving letting go as a loss, it's worth reframing it as an act of acceptance, as Jung suggested, whose ideas emphasize that acceptance transforms, while denial only enslaves. Letting go means recognizing that some people come into our lives for a specific purpose, to teach us valuable lessons, not to stay forever. It also means recognizing that not all opportunities are meant for us, and that completing certain stages is necessary for further progress. Fear is the main stumbling block on the path to liberation. Fear of loneliness, fear of making a mistake, or fear of regretting a decision. All these keep many from letting go. However, by bravely facing your fears, you discover that they are not as great as they initially seemed. To facilitate the process of letting go, you can perform a simple exercise. You need to focus on what is difficult to let go of at the moment, whether it's a relationship, an obsessive thought, or a difficult situation. Then ask yourself, what will happen if I just stop clinging to it? Visualizing the feeling of lightness, peace, and tranquility that comes with liberation serves as confirmation of the correctness of the decision. In moments when it is especially difficult to let go, it is worth repeating as a mantra, I believe that what is meant for me will come effortlessly. The truth is that what is truly ours does not require desperate holding on. Overcoming emotional dependence requires a conscious rejection of the obsessive pursuit of those who do not show due appreciation. In moments when there is a desire to persistently seek attention, it is recommended to take the opposite action, to distance yourself. You should carefully observe the development of events when there is no chasing after those who intend to leave. In most cases, freedom from excessive attachment leads to the appearance of something more valuable, confirming the necessity of such a step. If you have doubts about whether it is advisable to keep certain relationships or things in your life, it is helpful to conduct a thought experiment. Imagine their absence. Analyzing your own feelings in this thought will help you make a decision. If instead of anxiety a feeling of peace comes, the answer becomes obvious. Often the problem lies not in the attachment itself, but in the unwillingness to recognize obvious facts. It is impossible to hold on to what is not meant to stay. True power lies in the ability to let go. Having mastered this art, a person moves from a feeling of scarcity to a state of abundance. People start to perceive him differently because the self-confidence emanating from someone who cannot be lost has a magnetic effect. Control over one's own life increases as attachment to things that do not bring benefits disappears. Letting go is the highest expression of self-confidence, while the inability to do so makes a person a slave to fear. However, there is something even more powerful than the ability to let go, the art of silence. It is this that distinguishes those who become truly unattainable. Concealing information and being enigmatic undoubtedly elevates a person in the eyes of others. Those who have achieved genuine inaccessibility have mastered a rare gift, the ability to remain silent. In an era when everyone strives for universal attention, recognition, and approval, a person capable of maintaining composure and restraint gains an undeniable advantage. By avoiding excessive frankness, impulsive reactions, and unnecessary justifications, he becomes an enigma that others are eager to unravel. And what is beyond understanding always arouses interest. Carl Jung emphasized the importance of introspection, arguing that true power lies in the ability to control one's own narrative. Such people do not need to constantly declare their thoughts, feelings, and intentions. They simply act, observe, and allow the results to speak for themselves. However, most people do not have sufficient control over their words and emotions. They are prone to excessive talkativeness, tedious explanations, and constant excuses. Every thoughtless word that escapes their lips becomes valuable information that others can use for their own purposes. The art of silence and its profound impact on human existence. Excessive openness and talkativeness, paradoxically, can deprive a person of magnetism and charm. When a person becomes too predictable and understandable, his significance in the eyes of others steadily decreases. The absence of mystery and depth repels, depriving the incentive for further knowledge. This principle is reflected in all aspects of existence. In the sphere of interpersonal relations, excessive accessibility and frankness turn a person into a convenient but unintriguing option. His presence is perceived as something self-evident, and the value of his opinion is leveled. In a professional environment, excessive frankness regarding plans and strategies is fraught with the fact that competitors can intercept the initiative or use the information received for their own purposes. In everyday life, constant excuses and explanations of one's actions create the illusion for others of the right to interfere and criticize. An undeniable fact, the less information a person reveals about himself, the more control he retains over the situation. Silence becomes a reliable armor, protecting against outside influence. Not everyone deserves to know intimate thoughts and feelings. Not everyone deserves access to personal space. Observational skills, which replace excessive talkativeness, allow one to discern the hidden motives and true intentions behind words. Unpredictability, born of silence, confuses opponents, preventing them from anticipating further actions. The ability to keep one's thoughts to oneself commands respect, because self-confidence does not need constant explanations. The ability to feel the energy of people develops, revealing their hidden motives. The ability to listen, prevailing over the desire to speak, opens up new horizons of understanding and allows one to see the world in its true light. The art of using secrecy for personal purposes is a powerful tool for achieving goals. One of the key aspects of this art is the ability to keep your plans secret until they begin to materialize. History knows many examples when premature announcement of intentions led to the collapse of undertakings. Before sharing your ideas with the world, you need to bring them to life. It is important to remember that actions speak louder than words. There is no need to warn about your steps. It is much more effective to simply do what was conceived. Explanations of your decisions are also not required, since there is no need to justify yourself to anyone. If a decision is made, you should remain steadfast and let the results speak for themselves. No less important is control over your body language. Secrecy is manifested not only in what is said, but also in how a person behaves. A neutral facial expression, a confident look, and the ability to pause before answering can make a much greater impression than 1,000 words. The ability to enjoy silence is another important aspect of secrecy. You should not fill every moment with unnecessary conversations. Truly influential people feel comfortable in silence because they realize that they do not need to prove anything. To maintain interest in your person, it is important not to reveal all the cards at once. Let others ask questions and show curiosity. Interest increases when there is room for mystery. Awareness of the power of the pause also plays an important role. In response to an uncomfortable question, don't rush to answer. It is necessary to take time to think and assess the situation. Such a pause creates the impression that the answer will be well considered and valuable. And finally, it is important to remember not to share your weaknesses with just anyone. Detractors can use this information against you. Therefore, you should carefully choose those to whom you can entrust your vulnerabilities and make sure they are truly worthy of it. Mastering the art of restraint is a valuable exercise for developing self-control and strengthening personal power. For 7 days, it is recommended to practice taciturnity in communication, answering concisely and to the point, avoiding unnecessary explanations. It is important to strive for clarity, brevity, and directness in expressing your thoughts. Observation of others should prevail over verbosity. You should carefully analyze people's behavior in situations where their interlocutor does not reveal all the information about themselves. Using pauses in conversations is also an effective tool. Before answering, it is helpful to take a short pause to maintain control of the situation. It is important to refrain from prematurely announcing your plans. Let the results of actions speak for themselves, surprising others instead of revealing all your cards in advance. Mastering the art of restraint leads to significant changes in the perception of personality. When a person controls information about themselves and is in no hurry to share it, others begin to see them in a different light. Some may feel uncomfortable because they cannot understand their intentions, while others will admire the confidence they exude. Still others will try to figure them out, since the unknown is always more attractive than predictability. The bottom line is that when a person becomes a mystery, power shifts to their side. Unpredictability and restraint create an aura of mystery that attracts attention and arouses interest. Reorienting life priorities in favor of oneself fundamentally changes the balance of power, giving a person more control over their own destiny. Often, people tend to put their own interests in the background, striving to please others, fit into society, and earn recognition. This common mistake weakens their position, as constant self-sacrifice transfers control over life into the hands of others. The famous psychologist Carl Jung emphasized the importance of individuation, the process of becoming a complete and independent personality. However, achieving this goal is impossible if a person continues to sacrifice themselves for those who are not ready to reciprocate. Inaccessible personalities have long learned this truth. When their own needs and desires become a priority, the balance of power shifts in their favor. Why does a change of priorities have such a powerful impact on a person's energy? The problem lies in the fact that from childhood, we are taught to feel guilty for thinking about ourselves. Society instills that selfishness is bad, that it is necessary to give and sacrifice oneself. However, it is important to distinguish between selfishness and healthy self-love. A selfish person demands, giving nothing in return, while a self-loving person gives, but does not allow themselves to be depleted. This is the key point. When a person begins to put themselves first, others change their perception. They cease to be easy prey, someone who can be used at a convenient moment. Instead, they become a person with their own principles and standards, and people, as a rule, have respect for those who have a clear position and are not ready to compromise at the expense of themselves. In the world of human relationships, there is an undeniable truth. Those who do not pay due attention to their own needs and well-being risk being only a secondary option in the lives of other people, and not a priority figure. When a person systematically sacrifices their time, energy, and peace of mind for others without receiving adequate returns, they involuntarily accustom them to underestimate their value and significance. It is worth considering, if an individual is always at the disposal of others, their presence ceases to be properly appreciated. Acquiescence creates confidence that they have no personal interests or activities. Lack of self-respect, in turn, entails a dismissive attitude from others. People who know how to set boundaries and keep their distance do so not out of coldness or alienation, but out of awareness of the value of their energy and unwillingness to waste it on the unworthy. How to learn to put yourself first without feeling guilty? First of all, it is necessary to master the art of saying no without unnecessary explanations or excuses. A person is not obligated to justify their unwillingness to participate in an event or provide a service. A simple no thank you is sufficient. The next step is to stop one-sided giving. If an individual notices that they are constantly initiating, making the main efforts, and doing most of the work, they should stop and carefully analyze who is actually around them. It is necessary to end communication without regret with those who do not appreciate their contribution and presence in their lives. Not everyone deserves a place in one's personal space. If someone remembers the individual's existence only when they need something, that person should be excluded from their circle of acquaintances. Instead, it is recommended to invest time and energy in oneself, in one's development and well-being. One should not put anyone above one's own peace of mind. If an activity or communication is more draining than satisfying, it should be abandoned. Feeling guilty for prioritizing one's own interests is destructive and unjustified. A person is not obliged to spend their time and energy on those who do not appreciate it. If someone is indignant that the individual puts themselves first, it only indicates that this person previously took advantage of their tendency to self-sacrifice and neglect their own needs. The transformative power of prioritization and its instant results. If there are still doubts about how prioritization can transform existence, it is worth conducting a small experiment. For 7 days, one should resolutely refuse to perform those tasks that do not bring sincere desire, without experiencing the slightest feeling of guilt. It is important to carefully monitor the reaction of others to the suddenly arisen unavailability. It is necessary to allocate precious hours exclusively for oneself, protecting them from any external intrusions. One should consider how often actions are dictated by a sense of duty and not by genuine aspirations. Soon, an amazing effect will be revealed. Those who genuinely value the relationship will show respect for personal space and established boundaries. Those who valued only convenience will gradually disappear from view, and this circumstance should be welcomed. What happens when a person becomes the main priority in their life? The attitude of others undergoes dramatic changes. Those who sincerely appreciate stay close and begin to show even more respect. Those who were guided only by considerations of convenience disappear, and those who previously took it for granted suddenly realize the prospect of loss. The main secret is this: when a person begins to value themselves, the world reciprocates. But there is also a higher stage of self-development to which it is necessary to strive, a complete transformation of one's presence. This is not only about prioritizing, but also about radiating a special energy that makes others perceive the personality in a completely new way. Achieving such a pinnacle of personal development entails dramatic changes in interaction with the surrounding world. When an individual becomes unapproachable, their inner energy undergoes a transformation. They cease to be a beggar, a pursuer, or someone who easily succumbs to the desires of others. On the contrary, they realize their value and do not fear the loss of what does not correspond to their inner convictions. People who have reached this stage radiate a special aura that is felt on a subconscious level. This is more than just words. it is perceived energy. When such a person appears in society, others involuntarily feel a change in the atmosphere. The absence of the need for approval entails an increase in respect, admiration, and new opportunities. It is important to realize that people have respect for those who are not afraid of losses. Carl Jung, a famous Swiss psychoanalyst, developed the concept of individuation, describing the process of becoming a holistic personality, independent of external factors. Achieving this stage of development radically changes the perception of a person by others. Remember examples of people who do not need anyone's support, but at the same time attract attention and cause a desire to be around. The secret lies in their independence, which has a magnetic force. When a person becomes self-sufficient, others stop taking them for granted. Those who previously ignored them begin to show interest and seek their company. Opportunities arise on their own without the need to make excessive efforts to achieve them. The second aspect of the phenomenon of unreachability is the strengthening of personal influence without unnecessary words. Unreachable personalities do not strive to demonstrate superiority or attract universal attention, but their presence invariably stands out against the general background. The secret lies in the magnetic power of self-confidence. While a person seeking approval is often verbose, trying to please and appeal to others, an unattainable individual simply exudes inner strength and confidence without needing to prove their worth. It is this level of self-sufficiency that makes others perceive such a person as worthy of attention and respect. However, achieving this state is only part of the task. Maintaining it is equally important. There are 3 key principles that allow you to avoid returning to previous vulnerability and susceptibility to manipulation. First, you must always put your own interests and values first. If someone's behavior or words make you doubt your own worth, you should reconsider the advisability of having that person in your life. Second, you should avoid excessive explanations and justifications. Having made a decision, you must remain firm in your position and not waste energy convincing others of your rightness. Third, it is important to surround yourself with people with a similar worldview. Communication with insecure people who are dependent on the opinions of others can gradually return you to the previous cycle of striving for approval and susceptibility to influence. The third postulate states that when an aura of inaccessibility surrounds a person, social interactions undergo dramatic changes, shifting in their favor. Unattainability is not just a different view of others, it is a complete transformation of the rules of the game. Those who previously did not pay attention now strive for communication. Those who naively believed that they had the power to manipulate feel discomfort in the presence of this person. New perspectives and opportunities arise by themselves. True value comes when a person stops actively seeking it, as others intuitively feel the energy of someone who is aware of their own worth. To maintain this state, the following exercise is recommended. For a week, carefully observe those who seek to attract your attention and ask yourself if they really deserve it. Every time there is an impulse to justify or explain yourself, pause and remain silent. Get rid of any actions that can be interpreted as a desperate desire to be accepted. At the end of each day, analyze your actions. Were they dictated by self-confidence or a need for approval from others? When a person reaches a certain peak in their development, the world around them is transformed. Others begin to experience admiration, although they cannot always explain the reasons for it. Respect appears, which does not require any special actions or evidence. There is a sense of freedom that was previously inaccessible as dependence on the opinions and evaluations of others disappears. Here it is important to understand the key difference. When an individual no longer needs approval, attention, or confirmation from others, they automatically become an object of interest to others. However, to reach this stage, it is necessary to discard everything that once made them dependent on the outside world. This is what distinguishes those who are still in the clutches of other people's expectations from those who have gained true independence. In conclusion, it should be emphasized that the path to becoming unattainable is not a manifestation of arrogance, but an act of gaining personal power. It is an awareness that no one has the right to control, manipulate, or belittle a person. It is taking responsibility for your life and establishing clear boundaries that no one dares to violate. Individuals who have reached the heights of self-development are no longer bound by the framework of other people's attitudes and prescriptions. They do not need to seek confirmation of their importance and do not seek permission for self-expression. As a result, the world around them begins to treat them completely differently. When a person stops obsessively seeking attention, they seem to turn into a magnet, attracting universal attention. The absence of a plea for recognition makes them a desirable prize. The refusal to make excuses turns them into a mystery, and mystery always attracts and intrigues. What changes occur in the life of a person who has adopted such a mindset? First of all, their presence in society is transformed. They cease to be someone who can be ignored or perceived as something self-evident. Relationships that did not bring them satisfaction and benefit gradually fade into the past, making room for those who truly value their energy and individuality. New opportunities arise as if by themselves, because self-confidence has an incredible attractive power that others unmistakably feel. A person gains peace of mind because they no longer waste precious energy on trying to fit into other people's frameworks or please everyone. However, it is worth noting that such a transformation does not happen instantly. It's more of a daily choice that requires constant awareness and self-control. Every time the urge to react impulsively arises, when the need for excuses appears, when doubts about one's own worth creep in, it's necessary to remember. Only the individual decides whether to remain accessible and predictable, or to rise above these weaknesses and limitations, becoming the master of their own